Hello, and welcome back to Kuma English Listening Hub. Today we're heading to the British seaside not for fish and chips alone. Although, frankly, that's never a terrible idea, but to explore a peculiarly British invention, the Seaside Pier. If you've ever stood at the end of one with the wind giving you a proper battering, gulls heckling overhead, and the sea looking both majestic and mildly threatening, you'll know the feeling. Piers are equal parts engineering project, entertainment venue, and cultural time capsule. And, rather surprisingly, they're also a front line in the struggle against coastal change. Now, when people think of Britain's coast, they picture cliffs in Cornwall, beaches in Devon, maybe the white chalk of Dover. But the pier belongs to another Britain. The Britain of Victorian ambition, weekend excursions, brass bands, penny arcades, and that familiar mix of glamour and grit. A pier is, in essence, a very long walkway to nowhere, and yet it has offered generations somewhere to be. Let's start with the obvious question. Why build a platform out over the sea in the first place? In the early 19th century, piers were practical. They allowed boats to dock where the shoreline was shallow or awkward, and they supported the growing business of seaside travel. As railways expanded, towns like Brighton, Blackpool, and Weston-super-Mare suddenly became accessible to people who, until then, might never have seen the sea at all. The pier became a kind of ceremonial threshold. You didn't merely arrive at the seaside, you processed out over the water, as if the ocean deserved a proper introduction. But very quickly, the pier turned from a utilitarian landing stage into a theater of leisure. The Victorians were keen on improvement of the body, the mind, and the moral character, and sea air was thought to be positively medicinal. A promenade above the waves in one's best clothes was presented as a health practice with the added bonus of being quite enjoyable. Fair enough, really. Of course, what begins as health soon becomes entertainment. By the late 1800s, piers sprouted pavilions, bandstands, and later theaters. These weren't minor side attractions. Some piers hosted major acts: comedians, singers, variety performers. If you squint at old photographs, you can almost hear the music carried on the wind, punctuated by the creak of timbers and the occasional shriek from someone whose hat has just made a bid for freedom. Yet none of this works without the engineering, and the engineering is frankly brilliant. Consider the basic problem. You want to place a large structure in a corrosive, dynamic environment. Salt water eats metal, storms hurl waves like fists, and the seabed shifts. It's like deciding to build a delicate drawing on a moving, wet, abrasive surface and expecting it to last a century. Traditional piers relied on piles, long columns driven into the seabed. Early wooden piles were vulnerable to rot and marine organisms, so engineers moved toward iron and steel. Cast iron, then wrought iron, then steel, each with their own properties. The trick is to balance strength with flexibility. A pier must be rigid enough to support crowds, buildings, and occasionally a surprisingly enthusiastic dance floor, but it must also have some give. Too stiff, and it snaps under stress. Too flexible, and it feels like walking on a polite but alarming trampoline. And then there's the matter of waves. People imagine waves as gentle, rhythmic things suitable for postcards, but storm waves deliver shock loads. When a big wave hits a pier, the water doesn't merely splash. It can slam into the underside of the deck, forcing air and spray upwards with tremendous power. Engineers talk about uplift, lateral loading, resonance. Ordinary visitors talk about getting drenched and wondering why they didn't bring a better coat. Let's take Brighton Palace Pier as a case study in cultural endurance, if not always in tranquility. Opened in 1899, it's still doing what it was built to do, pulling people out over the water and offering them a concentrated dose of seaside fun. Arcade machines, rides, snacks, and that particular atmosphere where childhood nostalgia and adult resignation meet halfway. Yet even Brighton's pier has to contend with aging materials, maintenance costs, and storms that are by all accounts getting more dramatic. Maintenance is the unglamorous heart of pier survival. You don't merely paint a pier and call it sorted. You inspect joints, replace corroded bolts, monitor the condition of piles, repair decking, protect metalwork, and you do it while the structure is being used, battered by weather, and judged by the public. People notice if the chips are cold or the loos are dreadful, but they rarely notice the hidden scaffolding of care that keeps the whole thing standing. Then there is fire, a surprisingly common enemy of piers. Many piers have suffered major fires, sometimes because of old wiring, sometimes because of accidents, occasionally because of deliberate acts. The issue is that piers historically contained a lot of timber and flammable materials, and they're awkward places for emergency services to access. A fire on a pier is not like a fire in a building on land. You can't easily bring heavy equipment onto a narrow walkway over water. The result is that flames can spread rapidly, and a whole section can be lost before anyone can get properly on top of it. So why do communities keep rebuilding them? Why not accept that the sea wins and move on? Here we get to the social meaning of piers. A pier is not just a structure, it's a marker of identity. Coastal towns have often faced economic ups and downs. The decline of domestic seaside holidays with the rise of cheap flights abroad, the seasonal nature of tourism, and changing tastes. A pier, in many places, is a statement, we're still here, we still matter, and we can still put on a show. Blackpool's piers are a case in point. Blackpool, with its illuminations and its unapologetically big energy, has long been a symbol of working-class holiday culture in Britain. For some, it's a bit brash. For others, it's a cherished tradition. Its piers have offered amusements, performances, and that slightly chaotic joy that comes from being among thousands of people all determined to have a good time despite the weather. Blimey, if that isn't British resilience, what is? Yet piers are also changing. Some have leaned into heritage, restoring Victorian details, hosting small exhibitions, running guided tours. Others have embraced contemporary events, live music, food festivals, art installations, and there's a quiet debate underneath it all. Should piers remain nostalgic playgrounds, or should they become multi-purpose civic spaces? This question becomes sharper when we consider the future of the coast itself. Sea levels are rising, and storm patterns are shifting. Coastal erosion is not new. Britain's coast has always been dynamic, but the pace and predictability are changing. For towns that already feel economically stretched, the prospect of more frequent damage is daunting. A pier is exposed by design. It sticks its neck out, literally. And when nature swings, it's the pier that gets clobbered first. In response, some places are investing in smarter monitoring. Sensors that detect movement, corrosion, stress, and vibration. Imagine a pier quietly reporting on its own health, like a patient wearing a medical device. That sort of technology could help maintenance teams intervene before small issues become catastrophic. It's not glamorous, but it's spot on as a strategy. There's also a fascinating tension between authenticity and modern standards. People want a pier to feel historic, to have that unmistakable atmosphere. Creaky boards, wrought iron, ornate lamps. But safety regulations, accessibility requirements, and climate resilience measures can clash with that aesthetic. You can't simply preserve the past as if it's sealed in a glass case. You have to negotiate with it, and negotiation costs money. Many piers operate on tight margins. They rely on seasonal footfall, decent weather, and visitors willing to spend. Grants and heritage funding can help, but they often come with conditions. Private investment may bring improvements, but it can also shift the character of a place. Communities sometimes argue over whether a pier should be a commercial enterprise, a public asset, or something in between. Let's pause on the human side. Think of the pier workers, the maintenance crew out early, the arcade staff dealing with sticky fingers and malfunctioning machines, the people serving tea while being asked, for the 100th time, whether it's supposed to be this windy. At the end of a long summer day, they must be absolutely knackered. Yet, they're part of what makes the pier feel alive. A pier without people is just a corridor over water. A pier with people becomes a small, shifting city. Piers also feature in British storytelling. They appear in postcards, films, novels, and songs. They're romantic, yes, but also slightly eerie at night. A line of lights receding into darkness, the sound of waves below, the sense that you're standing between land and sea, between safety and risk. It's a liminal place, as the academics would say, and the rest of us might simply call it a bit spooky, mate. In recent years, some artists and architects have reimagined what a pier could be. Not necessarily a noisy arcade, but a platform for public art, marine education, and environmental observation. Picture a pier with tide pools carefully protected, information boards about local species, maybe even small laboratories or citizen science stations. The pier becomes a bridge not just into leisure, but into understanding the sea. And that, perhaps, is the most interesting development. The pier as a mediator. Historically, it mediated between town and ocean, visitor and holiday mood. Now it can mediate between community and climate reality. It can be a place where people feel the power of weather directly, where the sea is not an abstract concept but a physical force beneath your feet. So, next time you find yourself on a British pier coat flapping, hands cold, chips in a paper tray, take a moment to notice what you're standing on. A structure that has survived fashion, fires, storms, economic shifts, and changing ideas of fun. A structure that is, in its own odd way, both stubborn and generous, because a pier doesn't promise perfection. It promises an experience, a walk into the wind, a view back at the land, and the reminder that Britain, for all its inland routines, is an island nation at heart. If you've listened this far, cheers. And if you ever end up at the seaside, go on, take that walk to the end of the pier. It might be raining sideways, but you'll feel alive. Thanks for listening to Kuma English Listening Hub. If you enjoyed this C2 level episode, come back soon for another deep dive into the stories hidden in plain sight around us.